Tonight on 24, on the eve of the resumption of negotiations in Oman, Washington has warned that Tehran will pay a heavy price for stalling. Bitkoff has reiterated that Tehran should voluntarily stop enrichment. Ghalibaf says Iran will not negotiate the way Trump wants. As rocket attacks on Israel continue, the country's opposition leader has called for expanding strikes against the Houthis. Lapid has said that IRGC members in Yemen should be targeted. And new details about 5 Iranians arrested in Britain for attempting to attack the Israeli embassy. The National says these individuals are members of the Quds Forces Special Unit 840.
From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad.
Greetings and good day to Iran International viewers in Iran and around the world. With the confirmation of the 4th round of negotiations set for Sunday in Oman, Reuters has reported that Steve Bitkoff, Trump's special envoy, will soon travel to Muscat. In a recent interview, Mr. Bitkoff emphasized that the White House is seeking to resolve Iran's nuclear crisis through diplomacy, and that the military option will only be considered if negotiations fail. However, he warned that if Iran tries to stall for time in the negotiations, it will face a tough response. A few hours ago, Iran's foreign minister also shared more details about the 4th round of talks.
The timing and location of the negotiations are determined by the host country, or the intermediary, which in this case is Oman. Our Omani friends asked us about Sunday. We expressed our agreement, and apparently, they also spoke with the other side. So far, the plan is for the negotiations to be held on Sunday. As for the start time of the talks, we are still waiting for coordination from the Omani side.
Samira Gharia is joining us from in front of the White House. Samira, it looks like it's going to be a busy week in the Persian Gulf region. Once again, Bitkoff and Iraqi are negotiating. This is happening almost at the same time as Mr. Trump's trip to the region.
That's right. As Axios also reported at the beginning, a few hours ago, it was decided that on Sunday, officials from the Islamic Republic and the United States will meet in Oman. It's not clear whether Mr. Anton will be there as well. Are the talks purely political discussions? Will there be technical discussions, or will there not be any? After Axios published this news, Mr. Iraqi also confirmed it, and in other reports I saw, it was written that the Islamic Republic has agreed to a 4th round of negotiations in Muscat. Apparently, the proposal to hold the 4th round was made by the United States to Oman, and the Iranian side had to agree to it. And if we also take into account what Mr. Ghalibaf said, that the United States has given us proposals and told us we must accept them, and that we will not submit to this humiliation. Maybe all of this can be considered together, leading to the conclusion that the Islamic Republic was in the process of making a decision whether to finalize things and hold talks on Sunday or not, and it now seems that they are going to go ahead with it. Tomorrow is the day when Mr. Bitkoff will meet with the Iranians in Oman, and Mr. Trump will also head to the region and begin his meetings. Starting Tuesday morning, Mr. Trump will be in Saudi Arabia, and after that, he will travel to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. There will definitely be discussions about Iran during these trips, although the White House has not officially stated whether Iran will be a main topic of discussion or not. But we know that Mr. Trump is making these visits and this trip mostly with economic motivations. In fact, many of the plans and programs prepared for Mr. Trump are mainly focused on economic issues during these meetings. But on the other hand, we also have the issue of Israel. Fardad, this week, Mr. Trump made a surprising announcement that they had reached an agreement with the Houthis in Yemen. The Israelis said they were caught off guard. It was similar to what happened when the news about direct talks with the Islamic Republic was announced. After that, it was said that Mr. Dermer, Mr. Netanyahu's Minister of Strategic Affairs, would come to Washington. On Wednesday, Mr. Dermer was here. He went to the State Department. On Thursday, he also went to the White House, and on both days, at both places, he specifically discussed the Iran-U.S. nuclear negotiations with the American side, In his meeting with Mr. Rubio at the State Department, on Wednesday, he expressed Israel's concerns about which parts of the negotiations the U.S. intends to have with the Islamic Republic have caused Israel to worry. And on Thursday, in an unprecedented event, he had a private meeting with Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump usually does not meet with individuals or official leaders of foreign countries unless they are heads of state. In other words, Mr. Trump himself generally does not meet with anyone below that rank, but he sat down with Mr. Dermer in the room. Mr. Rubio was also present, and Mr. Vance, who was Mr. Trump's deputy, was there as well, along with Mr. Bitkoff. Besides the hot topic these days of food and humanitarian aid, they also discussed Iran and the nuclear negotiations. This comes as just today, Foreign Policy published a report about how Mr. Netanyahu is realizing that, regarding Iran, he can no longer pull off the kind of political maneuvering in D.C. and Washington that he used to be able to. And Israeli officials are worried that the same kind of surprise that happened with the Houthis might now happen regarding the nuclear negotiations. But the U.S. ambassador to Israel came out. A few hours later, he announced that our relationship, these days, is stronger than ever, and that there is absolutely no disagreement or tension between, Israel and the United States.
Thank you, Samira Guriai, with us from the White House. As I told you, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Parliament, said that Trump, in his letter to Khamenei, stated that Tehran must accept what the White House has set out. And the purpose of the negotiations is to convey Trump's demands. Ghalibaf went on to say that, according to him, the Islamic Republic will not accept such humiliation.
Whether in the text of his letter or in the statements you hear from him today, that's his message. He says, accept what I have set out for you and come forward. Come, so I can deliver this to you. This is the essence of his argument. Of course, we will never accept such humiliation. Just as the Supreme Leader has not accepted it and has said that such a thing is not honorable. And we will not do this. And if today negotiations are even happening indirectly, it's because the other side has retreated from all the red lines they had crossed.
Mehdi Arabshahai, political analyst, and Fareshta Pezeshk, international relations expert. Both of them are joining us from Washington. Ms. Pezeshk, Mr. Ghalibaf's remarks come as Arachi is scheduled to meet with Bitkoff again on Sunday. Is this just for domestic consumption, or do you think that, if the pressure is really as intense as they say, the Islamic Republic might actually withdraw from the negotiations?
It's possible. Look, we've talked about this topic a lot already. It seems that, well, for domestic reasons, Mr. Khamenei ultimately agreed to these negotiations. But there's still the question of whether they're really willing to accept all the conditions that Trump might demand. And based on the news, in recent days, if this trend continues, there's a chance that Trump's team will insist on dismantling Iran's nuclear program, with the details being that enrichment wouldn't be allowed at all. That is, the centrifuges would be completely dismantled. It's possible that the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic, just as he said before, won't agree to such negotiations. At the same time, he might say that we did our best to try to reach an understanding with them. But, as I've said, they are the great Satan and can't be trusted. We tried, but they showed that they don't want to cooperate and just want to dictate terms. This could have domestic reasons, and also, right before Sunday's negotiations, it puts pressure on Trump's negotiating team, signaling that we're not willing to give in to any kind of pressure, or provide everything they want. But at the same time, we see that the news coming out and the statements from the Israelis show that they are now more optimistic. They seem more satisfied, and it appears that the disagreement between Trump's team and the Israelis that existed in recent weeks has faded. If this trend continues, then these indirect negotiations that are taking place practically won't be able to achieve much, and it will end up leading to a military attack, and then the question will be how large that attack will be and what its consequences might be. But I think Mr. Ghalibaf's remarks are also about preparing public opinion at home, so that people are ready for the possibility that the negotiations might fail. Because, as we know, the currency market had already reacted quite a bit. The price of the dollar had dropped in those first days, and there was a sense of hope. At the same time, it was also a message to the American negotiators that, if we're seeking an agreement, we're not willing to back down from our red lines, and it puts some pressure on them as well.
Mr. Arab Shahai, now, depending on what point in time we consider as the starting point, it seems that Mr. Trump's 2-month window has either ended or there isn't much time left. Both he and his associates have repeatedly said that they won't negotiate just for the sake of negotiating. They won't give the Islamic Republic the opportunity to stall for time. Now Mr. Bitkoff has repeated that again. Next week, Mr. Trump will also be in the region. Do you think we're getting close to the last minute of these negotiations?
Yes, greetings to you, all the viewers, and the esteemed guest. Look, the reality is that the behavioral pattern and track record of the Islamic Republic, especially if we go back to the negotiations over the JCPOA, have really created the impression that one of the main strategies of the Islamic Republic is stalling and buying time. And well, this is a fact that has become completely clear to the Americans as well. On the other hand, we know that, in any case, at that time, the snapback mechanism was also about to be triggered. On the other side, we know that. But Trump administration is also quite eager right now to achieve some kind of accomplishment in foreign policy. After all, there were 3 cases that the Trump administration started from the very beginning when it came to power. The issues of Israel and Gaza, Russia and Ukraine, and also Iran's nuclear case. All 3 of these, in fact, the other 2 can be said to be currently stalled, and the nuclear case is also facing a lot of obstacles and difficulties at the moment. I think, in any case, this 4th round, well, there was also a pause between the 3rd and 4th rounds. We had a few important events happen during this interval between the 2 rounds. One of them was actually the departure of Michael Waltz from his role as advisor to the U.S. National Security Council, who was considered perhaps one of the most hardline figures in the U.S. government. But on the other hand, it seems that Steve Bitkoff, who has generally been seen as a more moderate and flexible figure and has favored a more lenient approach toward the Islamic Republic, has shifted his positions closer to Rubio or those more hardline factions. I think a kind of consensus has formed within the U.S. government about what should be said. Previously, we saw that Bitkoff would bring up the idea that the Islamic Republic could enrich uranium up to, say, 3.67%, but Trump did not accept this. Now, everyone is standing firm on this issue. Certainly, the main topic and the central issue that will be discussed is going to be uranium enrichment. Will the Islamic Republic be willing to accept a complete halt to uranium enrichment? Will it agree to transfer its stockpiles of enriched uranium out of Iran or not? Or can it use the tools at its disposal to steer the negotiations in a way that forces the U.S. to back down from its position? In any case, we know that accepting those conditions is also very difficult for the Islamic Republic. It would essentially bring to an end a nuclear program that they have invested in for maybe 20 years, and at the very least have heavily promoted from a propaganda standpoint. I think this is really the point we're at. We're truly getting close to that last-minute moment you mentioned. In other words, it will ultimately reach a point where a yes or no must be said, and I think we're getting to that point. But if the negotiations are to continue, they will be extremely difficult and won't be resolved easily, even if that yes or no is given here.
Ms. Pazeshk, I think the million-dollar question right now is this issue of enrichment. Based on what the officials of the Islamic Republic have said, what is your interpretation? Is there anything they might accept?
Honestly, it doesn't seem like they even know themselves. In my opinion, given the pattern of the past years, I find it unlikely that Mr. Khamenei, as long as he is alive and in power, would be able to accept completely shutting down the nuclear program. Because, well, he has made this a matter of prestige and has tied it to his own legacy and, in turn, to Iran and the Islamic Republic. He has linked this to their resistance against the West. and those who want to impose their own views. And he has tied it to the idea that only the Islamic Republic is standing up to them. So I think it's hard to expect that they'd be willing to back down. In addition, there are groups that don't want any kind of agreement to be reached, and there are three main groups. One group is the hardliners in Iran. These are the recent events we're seeing unfold, including those Iranian terrorists who were arrested in London. There was talk of an attack on the Israeli embassy. On the other side, there's Netanyahu's own government and the hardliners in the US who are aligned with the Israel lobby, and those who share the views of Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. For them, sabotaging something this complex is much easier. In other words, disrupting negotiations like these is far simpler than trying to resolve all those complexities that Mr. Arbashahi also mentioned, especially in a very short time frame, with a lot of mistrust and under circumstances where they're negotiating indirectly. So, when you put all these factors together, I really don't know how much the Islamic Republic of Iran actually has the will right now to set aside these problems. Why would they even want to completely trade away their nuclear program? Because, in return, it's unlikely they'd be able to get a guarantee that they'd actually be willing to accept. I mean, even if the US were willing to offer a guarantee, would it really be worth it? For Iran to completely give up the only leverage it has? It's possible, but I'm not very optimistic that there's much real will for it. And at the same time, it's become a matter of national pride. The groups that oppose diplomacy can very easily turn this into an issue of pride. They could tie it to the legacy of the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic and prevent him from agreeing to such a thing, even if he wanted to. But still, the situation for the Islamic Republic is so difficult right now that it might be forced to do so. But as I said, I think Mr. Khamenei might find it easier to accept a limited attack than to completely dismantle the nuclear program.
Mr. Arabshahai. Mr. Trump has had almost very warm relations with the countries of the Persian Gulf. They have also made extensive investments in the United States, both times during his first term and now in the second round. His first trip has been to that region, and we know how ambitious their commercial and economic plans are, whether it's for investing outside their countries or within their own borders. They have also repeatedly expressed how concerned they are about any tension in the region. How much do you think their pressure could even serve as leverage for the Islamic Republic, giving it confidence that the Gulf countries won't easily allow Mr. Trump to drag the region into another war?
Well, look, honestly, one of the main levers of pressure the Islamic Republic has used all these years has been precisely the threat against the Arab countries along the Persian Gulf. After all, as you said yourself, destruction is very easy. I mean, if just a few missiles are fired at one of these countries, it could have a huge impact on their economies. These are countries that want to move full speed ahead toward economic development. They want to attract foreign investors, bring in tourists. Naturally, security is a very high priority for them. We've seen that, in any case, Saudi Arabia seems to be acting differently in this situation than you might have expected back during the time of the nuclear deal. Even Saudi Arabia is now, in a way, supporting the idea of an agreement between Iran and the United States so that the risk of war is reduced. In the meantime, though, I think the UAE's position might be a bit different. That is, the UAE might be seen as being closer to Israel, meaning those who aren't really eager for this agreement to happen. But Saudi Arabia has shown that, at least for now, it wants to keep tensions in the region from escalating, and we'll have to see whether they can manage to influence the negotiations or not. In the current situation we're seeing, I think the main point is whether, in the end, both sides will reach an agreement on the issue of enrichment. Will the Islamic Republic agree to completely abandon enrichment, or will the United States be willing to recognize a certain level of enrichment for the Islamic Republic? And naturally, various countries are also trying to influence these negotiations. Countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel, for example. The information we have right now isn't really enough to determine exactly which direction things will go. So we have to wait and see how Sunday's round of negotiations unfolds, and what results come out of it. At that point, I think it will be much easier to assess what is likely to happen next.
Thank you both Mehdi Arabshahai, political analyst, and Fershteh Pezeshk, international relations expert from Washington. Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, two senior Republican senators, warned that the Senate will only approve a nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic if the agreement leads to the complete dismantling of Tehran's nuclear program. Lindsey Graham emphasized that Congress will only support this agreement if it also addresses the missile program and, as he put it, the Islamic Republic's proxy terrorist activities. Tom Cotton also said that if the U.S. government wants a lasting and durable agreement, it must bring it to Congress and put it to a vote as a treaty.
A nuclear Iran makes for a far more dangerous world. A nuclear Iran makes the world a more dangerous place. Such a regime, by seeking to acquire intercontinental missiles, would be a direct threat to the United States. It would encourage the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. It endangers the safety of our men and women in uniform, and would be a threat to the very existence of our good friend Israel. So, I'm not just using rhetoric here. President Trump didn't either. Iran must never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Iran must never be allowed to be on the path to a nuclear weapon. As Senator Graham said, and as President Trump also stated, this means the complete dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. There is no reason for Iran to have centrifuges or to enrich uranium. Therefore, we encourage our colleagues to support this resolution, which in a way reflects the letter the President sent to the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic 2 months ago, and puts Iran before two choices. Iran can have a nuclear program that is destroyed, burned, obliterated, and completely dismantled. Or it can have a civilian and peaceful nuclear energy program. No centrifuges, no enrichment, no reprocessing, and no path leading toward nuclear weapons.
Our reporter Arash Alay has joined us from Congress. Arash, we heard Mr. Cotton's remarks, and I also mentioned Mr. Graham's comments. But realistically, if Mr. Trump signs or reaches an agreement with the Islamic Republic, is it possible to imagine, for example, Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton standing in his way?
Could they? Well, of course they could. These are some of the Republicans who are considered part of the party's main core. Let's not forget that there were rumors at first, when Mr. Trump made it to the White House, that, for example, Tom Cotton was supposed to become his senior national security advisor. And Tom Cotton himself turned it down. He said it was because he wanted to serve the party, so he didn't go to the White House. Even Lindsey Graham, who was a good friend of Mr. Trump and they play golf together, Mr. Trump has repeatedly disagreed with the policies that Lindsey Graham has suggested. He's taken the different side, especially, for example, when it comes to Ukraine. And later on, they tried to get closer to each other. The main issue regarding what Mr. Graham and Mr. Cotton explained is that, for an agreement to last beyond one president in the United States, it has to go to Congress and be put to a vote in the U.S. Senate. It needs to be amended into a treaty, an international treaty. At that point, if the next president comes in and wants to make changes to it, it will be much harder. It's not impossible, but the next president would have to come back here to Congress and put the whole thing up for a vote again. They need a bit, 2/3 of the votes. It requires 67 votes. It won't happen that easily. Another part of the senator's remarks was that, aside from the issue of enrichment, since the Islamic Republic cannot have enrichment, the issue of ballistic missiles and the Islamic Republic's support for terrorist groups is also on the table. And both senators said that, ideally, they would like to see these two issues included in the agreement as well. In other words, the Islamic Republic would have to stop being the Islamic Republic. And this is exactly what I asked both Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Brian Mast yesterday, that the DNA of the Islamic Republic is deaf to America and deaf to Israel. And what is currently on the table is completely different from the nature of a regime that has been chanting these slogans for 45 years. And now they would have to change that if they want to join this deal, if they want to agree to this accord. So, the senator's remarks were important in this regard as well, emphasizing that enrichment must be stopped. Also, the senators are saying, At least two very tough individuals, staunch supporters of America and opponents of the Islamic Republic, are saying that if these points are included in the agreement, then it will have their votes as well. I saw that the American press had run various headlines about this issue. For example, I saw that the Wall Street Journal had written, "An agreement the U.S. can live with." And then it referred to Lindsey Graham's remarks, explaining why these statements are important. Some people say these demands are maximalist. The Islamic Republic is already making concessions regarding its proxy groups. And later, the number of ballistic missiles is something that other countries are also committed to. For example, the United States and Russia had an agreement not to exceed a certain number of ballistic missiles. So these are not unusual or outlandish demands.
Thank you, Arash Aliyai, my colleague at the U.S. Congress. Yair Lapid, the leader of the Israeli opposition, in response to the Houthi missile attack from Yemen, has called for intensifying the country's military operations against Yemen and targeting members of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in that country. Although the missile launched from Yemen toward Israel today was intercepted, it still triggered warning sirens in several areas. Following this attack, flights at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv were once again temporarily halted. In response, the Israeli Prime Minister has warned that the country will deliver a decisive response to the Houthi attacks. I want to say this to the Houthis and to anyone who wants to harm us: any attack against us will not go unanswered. Our response will be powerful, whether in Lebanon, in Gaza, or wherever it is necessary, we will respond. In Lebanon, in Gaza, in every place, we will respond. Mehdi Jadinia, my colleague, has joined us from our studio in Washington. Mehdi, it seems that these Houthi attacks are becoming a huge problem for Mr. Netanyahu, because even their attacks, unlike, for example, Hamas's rocket launches, have been more or less successful in some cases. Just the blow they dealt to Ben Gurion Airport disrupted flights. How much political cost is this creating for Mr. Netanyahu right now?
On the surface and according to the evidence, it appears that the missiles were able to get past the defense systems. But before we get into more details, I'd like to mention 2 or 3 points here as an introduction to our discussion. One is that, although both Tehran and Washington emphasize that these negotiations are focused on 2 main issues, the nuclear program and economic sanctions, but the signals that Tehran has sent in the past few days, suggesting the Houthis are independent, for example, saying their actions are autonomous and that Iran does not support them, show that the issue of proxy forces is one of the gray areas or unspoken conditions in these negotiations and talks. Look, the reality is that for Tehran, along with Hezbollah and the Iraqi militias, the Yemen card is basically an offset card, so to speak, but it uses to raise the stakes for the other side. It increases the costs of negotiation and raises the price for the opposing side. Trump's recent reaction during the meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister, where he said, well, the Houthis have said they don't want to fight, so we'll stop the bombing, shows that the plans Tehran had made, or the goals it was pursuing, have to some extent paid off. This has led, for example, to Trump backing off from trying to satisfy his Israeli partner, or, so to speak, not putting in as much effort. On the other hand, the cancellation of the U.S. Secretary of Defense's trip to Israel, which was supposed to happen on Saturday. Of course, as of now, we still don't have any more details about the reasons for this trip being canceled. But this sudden cancellation is also something significant and worth paying attention to. This close cooperation with Tehran brings us back to the claim made by Israeli officials and military leaders who say that the Houthis are, as they put it, Tehran's puppets in his shadow play. They say the Houthis are Tehran's puppets in this shadow play. The truth is showing it's not that far from the truth. Honestly, if we look at the events that have happened, they all show that. This is rooted in reality. Let's go back a bit. For example, in an interview that the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, Bagher, did with a Chinese TV channel, he explicitly said that this issue definitely goes back more than 5 years. I don't remember the exact year right now, but he said that we provide advisory and military cooperation to the Houthis, and the Houthis, this Zaidi Shia branch that is now dominant in Yemen, currently control a third or more than a third of Yemen, and they are supported and strengthened by the IRGC. Various IRGC shipments, including medium-range and long-range missiles, have been discovered multiple times over the years in the ocean by American reconnaissance and military ships. All of this shows that there has been ongoing cooperation between Tehran and the Houthis, and these Houthis, who originated from Sada province, managed to advance things in such a way that they achieved a certain level of progress and independence in weapons production and causing damage. Now, this new missile they used was able, for example, to get past the THAAD systems and reach its targets. Last week, when they targeted Israel's main airport, all of this shows that there is likely this kind of cooperation. But the decisive issue here is whether Trump will back down and set aside the proxies from the negotiations to achieve results, or whether Tehran will back down. The answer to this million-dollar question comes down to whether Tehran is willing to hand over the main person responsible, the one who designed and orchestrated the creation and use of the Houthi forces, the Yemeni militias. This person, whose real name might not even be known, is known to us as General Chalet of the IRGC. Is Tehran willing to sacrifice him for the sake of negotiations and reaching an agreement, or not? This is the factor, maybe the indicator, that could show how effective this threat and Tehran's reduction of cooperation with its proxies will actually be.
Thank you. My colleague Mehdi Jadinia from our studio in Washington. Fardad Farahzad, a Middle East analyst, has joined us from Karbala. Mr. Farahzad, what do you think about this tension between the Houthis and Israel, which seems to be escalating, and perhaps what's strange is that, from the looks of it, the Americans have to a significant extent left Israel on its own in this conflict?
Look, on the surface, it seems like a kind of miscalculation on the part of the Houthis. From the perspective that, well, when there's a ceasefire between the Houthis and the United States, they should logically stick to that ceasefire. And even though they targeted Israel and not American interests, the US could still consider this a violation of the ceasefire. And naturally, we didn't expect the Houthis to carry out such an attack. But on the other hand, the Houthis themselves definitely considered this point and thought about it. So the question is, why did they launch another missile attack on Israel, despite being aware of this consideration? One possible answer is that it might be related to the previous attack. The previous attack happened at a time when we were experiencing explosions in Iran. We had the explosion at the Bandar Abbas port, and then a series of incidents that seemed unlikely to have happened so close together by coincidence, raising the possibility that it might have been sabotage. There is a possibility that Israel was involved, and then we saw that the Houthis launched a missile attack on Ben Gurion Airport, and one interpretation was that, although Iran is trying to avoid direct confrontation, it wanted to show a strong response that it would not remain indifferent to such attacks. So, through the Houthis, Iran wanted to send a warning to Israel. If we consider this possibility, if we assume that's the case, then the answer to why the Houthis launched another attack this time could be that maybe the goal is to show that the Houthis are acting independently of Iran. They wanted to demonstrate that the Houthis are still continuing their hostility toward Israel on their own. Unlike other groups allied with Iran, right now it's only the Houthis who are in direct conflict with Israel. They simply wanted to use this action to show, in a way, some distance between themselves and Iran. They wanted to demonstrate their independence in making decisions. And in line with this goal, as we know, the Houthis consider themselves the legitimate ruling government of Yemen, and this government is the only one that has declared war on Israel. In their view, it means that the country of Yemen is at war with the country of Israel. It is the government of Yemen that is at war with the government of Israel, and as long as this war between the two has not ended, they will continue these military operations by any means.
Thank you. Fardad Farahzad, Middle East analyst, joining us from Karbala. All right, let's go to Moscow for a moment. You're watching the fireworks for the Victory Day ceremony marking the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Since early this morning, just like in previous years, a grand ceremony and a large military parade were held in Red Square. In Moscow, many leaders of countries that still have more or less good relations with Russia, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, were also present. The footage you're seeing now, as I mentioned, is from the Victory Day ceremony, a day that, in modern European history, symbolizes the end of World War II and the defeat of the Nazis. On May 8th and 9th, 1945, Nazi German forces unconditionally surrendered to the Allied forces. At that time, the Soviet Union, along with the United States and some European partners like Britain, managed to defeat Nazi Germany. Every year on this day, major celebrations are held in many European countries, including Britain, as well as in the Russian Federation.
Thank you.
The wife of Ahmad Reza Jalali, the dual national prisoner in Iran, has said that this Iranian-Swedish doctor and researcher suffered a heart attack on Thursday night and was transferred to the medical ward of Evin prison. According to Vita Morenia, prison officials said that Jalali cannot be seen by a cardiologist until Sunday. Mr. Jalali's family and close relatives have called for immediate action from the Swedish government to secure his release and urgent transfer to medical facilities. Vita Morenia told Mehran Abazian, a reporter for Iran International, that despite her efforts to raise awareness about Mr. Jalali's condition, neither Swedish authorities nor the Islamic Republic have responded to requests to address the situation of this prisoner.
It was this morning when Ahmad Reza called me and said that he was just coming back from the Evin prison clinic because he wasn't feeling well at all last night. Then, at 4 a.m, he had severe chest pain and was sweating. He was feeling really bad, but he didn't have anywhere to go because apparently, he could only go to the Evin clinic or infirmary in the morning. Then, after the clinic opened, he went there and they did an EKG and they said that, his heart had an infarction, and that's why he needs to see a specialist. And he has to wait until Sunday for the specialist to come, a cardiologist, so that Ahmad Reza can be examined. But for several months now, both I and Ahmad Reza's lawyer have informed the Iranian government, the judiciary officials, and the Swedish government that Ahmad Reza's condition is not good. Last week, I was in Brussels. I had many meetings with members of the European Parliament, and I informed all of them that Ahmad Reza is not well, and at any moment something could happen to him that no one can even imagine what might happen. And this morning, the news came that he had a heart attack. As you know, I am in contact with the Swedish government and officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ms. Maria Malmer have issued a statement, but so far, there has been no response from the Iranian government to say what is happening, what they are doing, and no The Iranian judiciary officials should also know that Ahmad Reza is not in good condition for them to still keep him as a hostage and to play with the life of an innocent person. I ask both governments to act before anything happens to Ahmad Reza. Because for 9 whole years, a person has been living under a death sentence, and I am sure that this has caused him severe psychological and physical torture, and it's not true that Ahmad Reza was not healthy. He went into Evin prison healthy, but after 9 years, he has developed various illnesses. And today, unfortunately, we saw that he had a heart attack. I ask both governments, before anything happens to him, to end this hostage taking. The Swedish government should do everything it can for his release, and the Iranian government should also free Ahmad Reza.
At the same time as British media reported the arrest of another 31-year-old Iranian man on Friday in northwest London during an operation by the Metropolitan Police's counterterrorism unit. The national website wrote that 5 Iranians suspected of planning an attack on the Israeli embassy in London are members of the Quds Forces Special Unit 840 of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. These 5 individuals were arrested 5 days ago by British Special Forces and counterterrorism police. According to this report, some of these suspects may have entered Britain as migrants using small boats. Let's go to London. My colleague Bardia Afshin is joining us from there. Bardia, it seems like the dimensions of this operation are becoming more complex and larger. What details do you know?
These are 2 separate operations, and both serve as a reminder that the activities of the Islamic Republic of Iran can not only pose a security threat to Britain, but could also be a greater security threat to Britain's allies, Europe, or elsewhere. According to what's been reported on the National's website, quoting a security source, it seems that the Islamic Republic of Iran has now changed its tactics in order to target softer targets. This comes after, over the past 2 years, its proxy forces have, well, actually, played a diminished role and have suffered irreparable blows. But there's an even bigger concern, which is that in the case of these initial 5 arrests, which are separate from the arrest of the other 3 plus 1, as you mentioned, with a 4th person added, the involvement of Quds Force Unit 840 can be seen. This unit is responsible for planning and carrying out assassinations outside of Iran's borders, and its traces have previously been found in places like Denmark, in Turkey, in Europe, and especially in that plot to attack the lives of 2 Iran international hosts, one of whom is you, and the other Sima Sabet, where the involvement of this Quds Force Unit 840 was evident. But at that time, it was believed that they were using local criminal gangs through basically 2nd and 3rd tier intermediaries. But now we're seeing that there are trained Iranian operatives involved in it. Among those 5 people connected to the attack on the Israeli embassy in London, in West London, 4 of them are Iranian, and 1 of them is currently out on bail. As you mentioned, it's believed that they came to Britain from mainland Europe via small boats, crossing the English Channel. Overall, the entry of migrants into Britain this way has been a major immigration issue, but now it's turning into a security concern. How is it that criminal gangs, human trafficking networks, are able to bring these people in? Among these people, there could be terrorist operatives trained by Unit 840 of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And is it possible that the IRGC is even involved in actually directing these trafficking gangs? This could be a major question, and it could be a controversial topic here. Regarding the issue of the so-called soft targets that the Islamic Republic of Iran is believed to be able to go after, we can see, in any case, the cooperation between Mossad and the British security and intelligence forces. But, for example, this concern has increased for Israel regarding the Eurovision contest in Switzerland, to the point that they don't want Israelis to travel there, and this threat is considered a major one.
Thank you. My colleague Bardia Afshin from London was with us. And thank you for watching tonight's 24 program. Goodbye until Monday. And you can also watch this program again a little later on YouTube.